Hey, good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome on in. It's Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on ClaibsOnline.com. I'm it's ugly out there today, Claibs. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's another ugly day here in St. Louis. How's everything down in Florida?
Just the opposite. Not a cloud in the sky, nice breeze, supposed to be mid 80s, maybe low to mid 80s today. A great day and a great reason to be outdoors if you're in South Florida.
Is this your
and it's an off
last
day?
I was going to say, is this your last off day that you have?
No, I think I've got another one coming up because I think we have to play the Mets again, and I think that there is another game that's not on that we're not going to carry for one reason or another. So I think I have at least one, maybe two more, and we've got a couple of night games coming up. So I have a chance to do some things during the day.
How have those? So did they start night games a few years ago, or is it? This isn't the first time they've done night games.
It's been the first time in at least 10 years. Maybe
really?
longer.
I thought they had tried to work a few in here and there. I know they do a bunch in Arizona. They have night games all the time in Arizona, but
they do some down in West Palm Beach with the Astros and the Nationals. The Mets don't do any that I recall. Maybe they have this year. But, the last time we had a night game that I recall was probably against either the Mets, Yankees, or Red Sox. And this was at least 10 years ago, at least. But I get the feeling that we'll see more of them. Some people don't like them. Mike Shannon thinks it's the worst thing that ever happened to baseball. I happen to disagree because I think that, this is kind of how the season works, where there's a lot of night games. And people can plan their day a little bit better. Now, it may hurt the restaurants, where you don't go to dinner as much or you have a late reservation. But you can play golf. You can go out to dinner. I mean, you can go hang out at the beach or get some sun. There's a lot more opportunities to do things when you have night games. Now, I really feel like the last week of the season, you should have all but night games except 2 days. You should have a day game followed by a night game, followed by an off day, and that last game here should be a day game. Everything else should be at night because it's amazing to watch players have to try and make that change when they've been used to getting up at 7 a.m. and then all of a sudden, they're going to start playing at 7 p.m. It's a big change. And I just think that it's one of those situations that people are going to have to pay attention to. And I think we're going to see more of it in the future.
And when you think about how spring training works with the rosters and how they keep dwindling down and how there's less, I guess, bench players, less minor league players there to take their spots or give them off days, that final week is going to be a bit of a bear. And I wonder how these players are dealing with these rollovers. I know the rollover innings are over. Have you seen any kind of effect from that where they actually have to finish that first inning now?
No, it's been, everybody's kind of been playing. This is a chance to learn and work and get better. So they don't hold you to it as much as you might think because, you don't want to get anybody hurt. And if a guy needs a blow, then they just give him a blow. And, because we've seen guys come out in the next inning, they may come out of one inning and then come back and be replaced and then come back and start the next inning just to get their pitch count up. So it's been a little different, but nothing that's glaring to the point where people are complaining about it because we all know, A, the games don't count, and B, we're just trying to make sure the guy gets better, and C, you don't want to see anybody overdo it or get hurt.
Let's talk about one of those guys that's been playing really well so far in spring training, and that's Tyler O'Neill, who has so far, here we sit, it's March 16th. So far, he has earned that opening day left field spot, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's done everything they've asked him to do. And the biggest thing, Joe, he's not trying to pull that pitch on the outside corner. And now he'll strike out from time to time. He's not a guy that walks a great deal. But I just really like his pitch selection. And to me, it seems like, and this would be my mindset, the more I can reduce getting myself out, the better I'm going to be. And if a guy throws me a pitch that I can't handle and he catches the black or the plate, then good for him. Because, they pay pitchers a lot of money to get people out. So every now and then he's going to win. As a matter of fact, he's going to win 70% of the time. So if he lays off of pitches he can't handle and they get him out, okay, so what? But the pitches that he can handle, he's got to make sure that he bears down on them, and that's what he's been doing a great deal of here in spring training.
21 at bats so far for Tyler O'Neill in spring training, a 476 batting average with an OPS of 1357. So he's seeing the ball really well. Had a really nice opposite field double yesterday against Max Scherzer, who the first outing, Max Scherzer has been locked in spring training so far. So to be able to do that against a Cy Young caliber pitcher kind of shows where he's at right now. And when you see it play out, and I really think it looks like Mike Schilt's going to give us Paul Goldschmidt in the 2 slot with Arenado hitting 3rd. That's the way that they keep playing with it and going with it so far in spring training. So to have Paul DeYoung hitting, to have Tyler O'Neill hitting in that 4-5 slot and kind of extend that lineup even more and push Yachty maybe towards that 6 or 7 spot, it just lengthens that lineup and makes it so much more dangerous when you add Carlson in there too.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the lineup yet. I know that they've gone with different combinations, but I think we won't really see what they're going to look like until later this week. I still think they're playing with some combinations. If it was a perfect world, you'd have Carlson higher up in the order. And I think they're going to give him one more crack at that because DeYoung isn't hitting at all. And that's a concern. And I haven't seen anything that tells me that he's going to turn on tomorrow. So in that situation, the 4 spot's kind of open. And the thing is, O'Neill really hasn't hit in the 4 spot a great deal this year. And so there's a lot of things you still need to play with. So I wouldn't mark it down in ink that the lineup we've seen recently is going to be something we're going to see toward the end of spring training.
We talked about the night games. We talked about getting ready for the start of the season. We're about 2 weeks out now. Is this kind of the point where you start to see some of the guys just over it? They've been there for a month now. Are they ready for everything to start and get back to their home cities?
Not yet. I still think there's some guys who feel like they've got some work to do. I think there's some guys who are still trying to prove that they deserve to be on this ball club and even be higher thought of within the organization. So I think after this week, what you're leading to, I think is going to probably come into play more. And the reason why I say it in that manner, because we only have 24 games and, guys are battling this week just to stay consistent. And next week they'll be in a position where they want to be ready for the season. They'll play longer innings. They'll try and get as many at bats as they can. They'll certainly throw the innings that they're needed to throw. And you'll see more of a uniformed approach with regard to how the team wants to convey themselves when the season starts.
We still don't know who that 5th starter is. Who do you think it's going to be?
John Gant.
Really?
I think John Gant accounted for himself really well yesterday. Ponce is, he could be that guy, but here's the problem with Ponce de Leon. He just throws too many darn pitches. And they foul him off. It's not like he's wild or anything. But it wasn't like he has the Jordan Hicks at bat that he had the other day against Guillermo. But my point is, you can't throw 68 pitches in less than 4 innings and expect to be around. Okay, it just doesn't work. And that's been the bugaboo, which means he's got to dump that curveball and try and find a slider that they can chase a little bit more.
The Hicks at bat that you talk about, 22 pitches the other day. Did you see there was an article out the other day about Zach Greinke and some of the catchers that he's had over the years? Did you read that by chance?
I did.
Yeah, there was a story in there about a catcher that during a game, Zach Greinke hit him in the arm. And after the game in the hotel, the catcher asked, he said, "Hey man, what's up with that? It was a spring training game." And he said, "You'd fouled off 6 pitches. I was done with you. I just wanted to move on to the next batter."
Well, you know what? There's a guy, Stan Williams, to take it one step further. Stan Williams, who reputed to be maybe the strongest pitcher, if not player, they ever play. They wouldn't even let him touch his teammates without putting a guy on a disabled list. He'd grab you by the shoulder and all of a sudden you got a broken collarbone. Well, he had a clause in his contract. If he didn't walk an X amount of people, he got a bonus. So when he get to a 3-2 count or a guy foul off a few pitches, he just hit him. He just drilled a guy. I mean, he was so strong, he could put you on the disabled list. And Stan just recently died, but that was his claim to fame. He just said, I got tired of these guys, so I wait and go after the next pitcher, next hitter.
So Cardinals are off today. They'll play the rest of the week. Are you guys on the air, KMOX, for all those games?
We are on the air mañana. We have 2 night games this week, and Ricky Horton, John Rooney, myself will be down in West Palm Beach. And so we got some fun games coming up. And again, as I mentioned, you'll see teams and players start to take it a little bit more serious. The guys who wear the number 65 and up probably won't play as much. The pitchers will stick around a little bit because you want to keep a few arms in your bullpen. But, this is the fish or cut bait time for some of these players. And now you're starting to see what guys are going to look like in your minor league organization. Where does a Nolan Gorman start? Where does a Liberatore start? Is Delvin Perez a AA guy now? Do you give him a shot in AAA? I mean, those are the evaluations that you're going to start to see take place now when they do get an opportunity to play.
You're watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on ClaibsOnline.com, our Facebook and our Twitter page, along with YouTube. Powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura, and also sponsored by this man, Ryan Kelly.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly. The real estate market is on fire and homes are selling fast. Don't lose the home of your dreams. Be sure you're working with the experts. Get pre-approved today at thehomeloanexpert.com.
And we want to thank Ryan for joining us last week, talking about his upcoming climb information on that coming up here soon. Hey, before we finish talking about spring training with you down in Florida, you're still driving that Highlander from Munganast.
This Highlander and I are starting to have a real personal relationship. It's got everything you would want on a vehicle. I mean, technically, it's got everything. It's got great space. It handles well for a large vehicle. And I really like it. And it's amazing how many of them I see on the road down here. I mean, it's a very popular vehicle for sure, but it got me to Florida. It's going to get me back to St. Louis. And I couldn't feel safer and couldn't feel better about being behind the wheel of a Highlander. And if you don't believe me, go over and check out one yourself over at Munganast Alton in Alton, Illinois, Munganast Toyota over in Alton, Illinois. They've got a great selection. And don't forget, if you're looking for a used car, they've got plenty of them as well. And if you want to trade one in, they'll make a good deal with you. So this is a good time. People have a little stimulus money in their pocket and they're looking to do some things. Graduation is around the corner for their kids. So if you're looking for a new or used car, you might want to start. And I bet you'll end with a visit to Munganast Toyota in Alton, Illinois.
All right, let's talk tournament. Brackets came out on Sunday. Which direction do you want to go with this? I feel like we either start with Illinois or we start with SLU. Which one we starting with?
Well, let's start with the bad news first, and we'll get to the good news. I know people are disappointed that SLU didn't get in, and I've heard every excuse known to mankind on why they didn't get in. And, if we'd have done this and we'd have done that, well, here's what you should have done is won one of those games you were expected to win. The Billikens did not play well in their final game in the conference. The Billikens did not play well at home when they needed to. There were a couple of ducks on that schedule that everybody thought they would beat, and they didn't. And I know that we can talk about COVID, and COVID has had an impact for sure, but it's had an impact on every school that's in the tournament, whether you had it or whether you were playing a team that had it or whether your schedule was changed. COVID affects everyone. So you can't use that as an excuse when you had ducks on the pond that you didn't handle. You didn't take care of business when you needed to. And I think one of the problems, and this is one of the things I do commend St. Louis U for, they went out and they put together a pretty good non-conference schedule. The problem was that Minnesota wasn't as good as they thought they were going to be. And North Carolina State, good team, not as good as they thought they were going to be, especially with the Duke falling apart. Those are two games, you win one and you lose one, but you really, that was the only reason why I think St. Louis U was even considered, because conference-wise, they really messed up. They had some chances to do some damage and they didn't. So I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed in how things worked out for them. And I think the other thing that comes into play is this. We had people wanting to build statues for players on this team about the greatest this and the greatest that during a non-conference schedule. Okay. And they were good, but it's amazing when you get into conference play, how they became mere mortals in some cases, and it came back to bite them. And the difference between a good team and a team that's probably on the outside looking in is that you have guys like Illinois, like Gonzaga, some of the top echelon teams. They stepped it up when they got into conference play. St. Louis U went in the opposite direction, hence they're playing in the NIT, a tournament that they could win. I mean, they've got the talent to do it. How they approach it, we'll have to wait and see. Good news.
Yeah. I was going to say, the NIT, only a 16-team tournament this year, all down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. SLU with the 1 seed there. Mississippi State, I believe, in the first round is who they're playing. We find out today, I don't see it coming into play, but SLU is the third alternate for the NCAA tournament, as all the teams have to make sure that they are good to go and COVID-free by today. And it doesn't matter if they're a 1 seed or a play-in 16 seed. If they test, they get out of the tournament. So it's Louisville first, Colorado State second, and SLU is the third alternate. So we'll see if any of those 3 teams get in.
I wouldn't wait on that phone call. I would move on.
There's no reason to.
Mississippi State. You had your chance and you didn't succeed. So let's focus on something else you can do something about. Illinois, to me, is the most complete team in this whole tournament. They've got size up front. They can score inside. They've got great perimeter shooting. They got DeSomo, who's one of the best players in the country. I think Brad Underwood's done a really good job in putting together a really competitive bench. And their schedule. I mean, you look at their schedule. I know Gonzaga is number 1, but I got news for you. You let Gonzaga start playing some of the teams in the Big Ten, like Illinois had to, especially when Illinois went into Michigan and destroyed Michigan and some other places. I don't think Gonzaga would be undefeated. So I really look at Illinois as being the most complete team. Now, with that said, I think Gonzaga is damn good. I mean, they did what they needed to do against their opponents. They did exactly what they needed to do, is go out and beat them. And they beat the tar out of some of those teams. It wasn't even close. They're a very complete team. They got a lot of depth. They've got one of the more dynamic players in the country that's a freshman. And I could easily see these 2 teams facing each other in the finals.
And that's the thing. I mean, you look at who the Illinois has played just in the month of March. Mm-hmm. Just in the month of March alone, they have beat Ohio State twice. They've beat Michigan. They've beat Iowa to win the Big Ten championship. They have gone through. And then you look at who Gonzaga has played, and you talk about schedule. You talk about the non-conference schedule that SLU had or that Illinois had. Gonzaga tried. Gonzaga had Baylor on their schedule. They wanted to play Baylor, and because of COVID, it didn't work out. They didn't get to play them. So we don't know how tested Gonzaga has been so far this year. They went undefeated. It's just to go undefeated at all, you deserve to be a number 1 seed, no matter who you are. I mean, Earl Austin Jr. and I talked about it this past week. I mean, St. Joe's went undefeated. They were a 1 seed. You go undefeated, you get a 1 seed. That's how it should always be. And once they get into this, if they get out of that, if Gonzaga gets out of that first weekend, great. They might have to face. I mean, Gonzaga might have to face Mizzou in that second game this weekend. So they're going to be tested early with either Oklahoma or Mizzou in that second round matchup.
You think that's a test? You think Missouri is a test for Gonzaga?
We'll see which Missouri team shows up.
I don't see Missouri stacking up in any way against Gonzaga. And they have probably been one of the enigmas of this season because, obviously they beat Illinois at home. They had some decent wins, and then they go out and stub their toe against somebody much like SLU, and you just don't know what team's going to show up. And I guess I'm disappointed because this is a veteran team. This is not a team that's featuring a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. There's some guys that probably stayed a year too long. So I just don't see Missouri being much of a threat if they beat Oklahoma.
I'm not trying to sit here and bang the drum for Mizzou or for Oklahoma, but tell me a team from that Gonzaga has played this year that matches up with who they've played or with those 2 schools.
I couldn't pull one off the top of my head, but I think if you look at their record, if you look at Missouri and Oklahoma's record and how inconsistent they were, I'm sure there's a team on Gonzaga's schedule that probably could have got Mizzou
And
or Oklahoma.
Yeah, they beat BYU what 3 times this year. BYU is very good.
Yeah.
BYU's a good team. As I'm going through this schedule, that they beat Iowa all the way back in December. So, and how good are you? Now you're looking 3 months later. So it's hard to tell what kind of competition Gonzaga has played recently. Still, I don't see any reason why Gonzaga, for going undefeated all season, not having to travel, not having to go from all the way up in Spokane, Washington to wherever they would have had to fly every weekend in the tournament. Now they're just stuck in one spot, not having to put all those miles on them. Maybe that's beneficial to them for the tournament, not having to fly all over the country.
I think you make a good point. And, we're going to go through a phase when we get back to normalcy. There's going to be a group of kids that don't understand what the travel can do to them. They're going to have a group of kids that doesn't know what it's like to play in a hostile arena. And that's going to be a challenge for somebody for next year. But for right now, I think you make a great point. Man, when you can sleep in your own bed or the road trip is a short one, it's a game changer. So I'm anxious to see how this thing unfolds. And this is, as you mentioned, this is the first trip Gonzaga's taken out of the time zone, out of their own time zone. So there's a lot of things that go into this, I think. And I think the most important thing is just making sure we keep our fingers crossed and no one turns up positive, not because it could hurt their team, but, obviously you don't want to see anybody get sick, because this thing is taking its toll on too many people in this country.
As good, back to Illinois for a second, as good as I think they are this year, and they're right up there. I think it's them and Gonzaga 1-2 as far as the favorites go. I am very much looking forward to the potential of an Illinois-Loyola second-round game, just because you can go up and down, look at that Loyola roster. How many of those kids are from the state of Illinois that would have loved to go and play at Illinois, but instead, didn't get looked at and ended up in Chicago, and now they'll get a shot at, proving themselves.
Well, there's a reason why they didn't go to Illinois. In most cases, they weren't good enough.
And now they get to prove. Now, that's going to make them hungry. They're going to be playing some kids that they might have played in high school, and they're going to want to prove themselves. I like matchups like that where you see similar guys from the same area, from the same recruiting area of teams playing each other.
I don't think Illinois and Loyola recruit the same player. Illinois' roster is pretty diverse, but I understand your point about just being local, which is one of the things I've argued about for years. I think when you put together your non-conference schedule, you better have an in-state opponent, Illinois State or Valley team. You better play a team that was in the tournament last year, and you need to play a team that's in a conference comparable to yours, and a team that finished in a similar spot in the standings that you did from the previous year. I think those are three mandatory things because nobody wants to see Kennesaw State or Tougaloo College or any of these other farces that they put on these schedules. We got to get away from that. And again, SLU was guilty of it like a lot of schools were, but SLU did something about it and put some better teams on the schedule. The only unfortunate thing was they didn't have fans who were able to come out and see them play. And, it's just been a real thorn in my side over the years to watch these things unfold. And, you had to have legislation take place in the state of Kentucky where Kentucky had to play Louisville. We should be better than that. Play them because the money stays in the state. It stays here, if nothing else. And when you have these games that you put on the schedule and nobody knows who these people are, nobody cares about those games. You want to make sure your building is packed no matter who you're playing. But if you're playing somebody that's recognizable, I can assure you're going to fill it up sooner than you are bringing in a blood donor. And you can find a blood donor in state is also something you can do.
Hey, before we move on from this, it was this past weekend, the Big East tournament was at Madison Square Garden, and Patrick Ewing had a little bit of a run-in with security there, saying that they were checking his credentials and they kept questioning him over and over again, not knowing who he was.
Okay, I'm going to tell you another story I heard about that. I heard he was stopped once. And they asked him for his credential like they ask everybody else. And he took it upon himself to remind them who he was. Patrick Ewing might want to think about how many years he's been out of the game. And maybe there's some people who didn't know him as a player. Maybe there's some people who worked there that weren't basketball fans. But he blew this thing up as if they were asking for a retinal scan or the birth certificate of his first child. It wasn't that serious.
I'm going to tell you this. Here's I have a few different stories or run-ins with Madison Square Garden security. One time I was there with, you remember, I used to do the podcast with Road Warrior Animal. This was 2 years ago. I was at Madison Square Garden with him. He still knew the names of almost half of these security guards walking around in there because they were working back when he was a full-time wrestler working at Madison Square Garden. So if he remembered their names and they knew him, they should know who Patrick Ewing is, who came in there every single night.
Yes and no. And here's why I say that. In most buildings, they have the same people working that area where athletes, entertainers all come through the one door and everybody knows everybody. Again, there was one person that questioned. They asked him, where was his credential? They didn't ask him for his driver's license or anything like that. They obviously knew he had something to do with the tournament. But, I think sometimes we overblow these things. And Madison Square Garden has had their issues before with celebrities. If you recall Charles Oakley of a couple of years ago and his run-in with James Dolan. So I think it was a lot to do about nothing. And to be honest with you, even if it's Patrick Ewing, I'd rather for them to do their job, even though it might be a slight inconvenience, than not do it at all.
I've seen 2 events at Madison Square Garden, and both times I've ended up just walking around in places I didn't belong and sitting and watching the game in private suites. So I don't think the security at Madison Square Garden is all that great to begin with.
Well,
so.
I didn't say it was like they had the Delta Force guard. I'm just saying that this is an isolated situation where a guy felt slighted because they didn't know who he was. So I got over it, and so should he.
I think he's over it now, especially leading his alma mater to the tournament. I think he'll be fine, and hopefully there's no Pacer fans there or Pacer security watching any of the places that he's going to be at these next month.
Which, by the way, you mentioned the Big East. Here's a memo to St. Louis University: get the hell out of the A10. There's one spot open in the Big East. And you have more regional rivalries in the Big East than you do in the Atlantic 10. Get that spot, because I got news for you. In 2 to 3 years, when they blow this whole thing up, there's only going to be X amount of conferences that are going to be up here. And then all the rest of them will be those mid-level programs that don't get any love. They'll find their way on the, ESPN 9 or whatever the case might be. This is your chance. Get out. This conference has been a failure from day one, being in a conference that you had no real rapport with. They would get as many people in the tournament as the Valley. If they got 2 in, it was a great day. They've had some good players come through there, but the St. Louis University Billikens would have been better off and would be better off now if they were in the Big East, because we've given up on regional names. You used to have the Great Midwest or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or whatever, and you would think it was a regional situation. Well, when you look at Creighton and Marquette and some of those other schools that are now in the Big East, you know what? Put them in there. Get the hell out and get into a legitimate conference.
Hey, this is Lunch with Claibs and Joe, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, and driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Also powered by Ameren, Illinois, and their energy savings program. Energy savings made easy. Illinois residents may qualify for a free smart thermostat, $169 value, by going to AmerenIllinoisSmartSavers.com. Give them a call, 866-251-2531. That's 866-251-2531. Find out more details about the free thermostat and see if your home qualifies for that. Also, if you can install and activate it yourself, you can earn a $25 e-gift card. Help lower your heating and cooling costs, adapt to your schedules and preferences, and control everything just from your phone or your laptop. Again, that is the Ameren Illinois Smart Savers program. Go to AmerenIllinoisSmartSavers.com for more information. Are you and Rammer going to record anything before the NIT?
There's a good chance we'll do something. I think Rammer is en route. I think he was trying to get to Dallas for the game. So I'm not sure what his schedule is today. We've been working on some other stuff, so he will be my first call once we're done with this.
The Blues are in action this week. They were snowed out yesterday for a home game in Los Angeles, or for a road game in Los Angeles. So the
Kings were.
The Kings had a home game snowed out because they couldn't get out of Denver.
Well, if you notice the weather in Denver, nobody was getting out of Denver. And they warned everybody that, hey, look, we're going to shut it down. They couldn't get out in time. So I haven't heard of a rescheduled date. But I guess there's good news that some players are pretty close to coming back. Bozak, I think, was good to go. Schwartz and Thomas have been skating a little bit more. So, you're getting some more of the regulars in the lineup, and hopefully that'll turn things around. Because right now, as the record would indicate, they're a 500 team. And there's a lot of reasons why they are. One of which there's not enough energy working. There's not enough focus with this hockey team. Some of the young guys are starting to do some things. The kid the other night, Dakota Joshua, had a big hit on Ryan Reeves, and there's a handful of guys who would even think about running Ryan Reeves. He gets in a fight, and I thought it was going to spark the Blues, but he still got beat. But you don't have enough guys that are doing enough, and I'm going to pin this more on the forwards than anyone else, where they're not coming back and doing the things that they were successful at, whether it's a heavy game or whether it's trying to create more offense on the third and fourth lines. And even the first and second lines have had their moments as well. But one of the things that is good to see, it's good to see Tarasenko back. Perron has been playing really well. I like to see Cairo get some more opportunities. But, it's a season that we'd like to try and get through and get to the playoffs and then see what happens. But it's evident that there is a distance between the Blues and the Knights and the Blues and the Avalanche. And the Blues have a lot of trouble playing up against those other teams. While now we're seeing that the Sharks and the Ducks and the Kings are giving them problems. And we haven't even seen Minnesota yet.
As I look through the schedules for this, I believe it was the Ducks. I think were home. They didn't have anything going on yesterday. As I don't know why. I mean, if you're looking just to get games going, and I know the Blues have a lot of games in hand, I felt like they should have just sent them on up to Anaheim and had them play the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, the question would be, where were the Ducks 2 days before?
The Ducks 2 days before were home. The Ducks were home on the 13th. Their next game is scheduled for tonight in Denver.
Well, maybe travel was an issue for them as well.
They were home and they weren't flying into Denver. Just have them play there.
Well, I mean, things are cleared up in Denver now where the airport's open.
Yeah, I tweeted to the Coyotes to see if they had an opening on the schedule.
I don't think we need to see them for the rest of this year and maybe even next year. Jeez, you can have them.
Hey, Jordan Binnington signed a contract extension, 6 years, $36 million. I got to say, first of all, it happened the day after they announced the ESPN deal. So it seemed like the Blues were really quick to spend that ESPN money that hasn't made their pockets yet. But it's, it's not much. That salary cap's going to go up once the new TV deals start to kick in. So they're going to have a little more wiggle room. And it's not that much of an investment anyway. For the first goalie that ever won you a Stanley Cup, I see no issues with that deal at all.
You obviously don't remember the Jake Allen signing, do you? Because we said the same thing about him, and 2 years later, we couldn't figure out what to do with him because he was just a guy. I felt like, everybody says, well, it's a good deal for the Blues. They got a, cap-friendly deal, the whole 9 yards. But I haven't seen enough. I mean, yeah, he played well in the half a season he was here. He was average last year and probably been a little bit above average this year. Not a Stanley Cup winning goalie as we speak. And so to make that long-term investment is something that I thought we learned our lesson from when you did it with Jake Allen, when you did it with Alexander Steen. And at the end, you were hoping one would retire and another one you could find a trade partner with.
Yeah, they were able to get out from under the Allen deal. They were able to trade him. They must see something different here in Binnington. I don't know what the ages were of Allen when they signed him and where Binnington is now. I don't know what how much younger Binnington is from what Allen was, but They must see something different in him.
Okay. Hey, listen, I hope it works. I just think that when you look at this team, I would have gotten to him. I probably would have gotten to him a little later, but maybe they didn't want to go into the offseason without a deal being done. So, it's not a deal breaker. Okay. It's not. It's just something that I would just think, well, you do a long-term deal because you want to make it cap friendly. But okay, cool. Everybody's happy. Benner's here, and we'll see what happens. And we hope he turns out to be the goalie that they invested in.
I know that you've been you've been really happy to see more fighting in these games recently.
Well, this is what happens when you play teams so often. You're playing the same teams in your division, and there's a little contempt, and guys are starting to get a little frisky, and I think it's good for the game. Maybe we'll even see some fisticuffs when the playoffs roll around, because we're seeing too many guys running guys at this point, and somebody's got to do something about it. And I saw a game the other night. Gosh, who was it? It was last night. 2 Euros decided they wanted to fight, which is unheard of. But because a guy ran one of his teammates, he thought it was incumbent upon him to do something about it. And we're seeing more of that. Now, the problem that you have is some of these hits are clean hits, okay? We have allowed ourselves as hockey fans and players that if you breathe on a guy and you check him, then, it's a dirty play. And that's not always the case. There's some guys laying out some good body checks, but now we've gone through a generation of guys who don't know a good check from a cheap shot. So they take it upon themselves to try and go out and right a wrong. And in a lot of cases, it's not a bad play. I'll give you a good example. We mentioned Dakota Joshua running Ryan Reeves the other night. Clean check. Very clean check. And then all of a sudden, this other guy comes up and wants to fight him. If there's one guy who can handle his own buttons, I would think it would be Ryan Reeves. And if Ryan Reeves didn't think there was a reason to go after this guy, I don't know why this other guy felt he needed to do it. And we see a little bit more of that than probably what we should. But, it leaves the guys dropping the gloves, and I think that's good for the game.
I've been watching closely the NFL free agency that's been going on. Now is the legal tampering 2 days that you get with that. I tell you what, I mean, for as much smoke as there is around this Russell Wilson possible trade, at this point, I mean, I feel like it might have gone too far to where they can't bring him back, right? I mean, there's too much that has happened, it seems like, to strain that relationship, even taking calls about a possible trade.
No, I don't know. I think if you want to fix it, go out and get some linemen. And if you've noticed the last couple of days, there's been a lot of linemen being moved on both sides of the ball. If you want to fix the Russell Wilson situation, go out and sign a free agent offensive lineman. Go out and draft some other guys. That's a fixable situation. I think we're in an era where players have more of a seat at the table, and they express their concerns and issues, and ownership is starting to listen because they don't want an unhappy player. But if you think Russell Wilson's going to stay at home and out of protest, I think you're sadly mistaken. He'll find a way. And if the team shows that they're willing to do some things, they'll make it work. And if not, there's always a draft day. I think here's something that I would pay attention to. If you have a disgruntled quarterback, then you better go out and load up and get as many good linemen as you can. Because at the end of the day, if you need to move him, you need to move him for either another quarterback or you draft one that's going to be protected. So, and as I said, you're not seeing running backs or quarterbacks being signed. We had Fitzpatrick signed yesterday, but look at how many offensive linemen are moving around, including the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs cut both their tackles. Yeah. Okay. So they're trying to reload on the fly. They get a quarterback who understands how important tackles are, who decided to restructure his contract. That's where this game is won and lost at. And Russell Wilson thinks there's a better situation where they block better than what they do in Seattle. Then, maybe that's a good place for them to go if Seattle can get what they want in return. And maybe they might want an offensive lineman. Who knows? I think we're far away from seeing what the shape of next season looks like. We got a long way to go.
Houston's dead set. Yeah, Houston's dead set on keeping Deshaun Watson. And That's going to get messy. I think by the time we hit July or August.
Well, yes and no. I think if Deshaun Watson sees a different tone and approach by new management, then maybe he stays. Maybe he gets more involved. Maybe if they bring in better players. I don't know what their cap situation is like. So for me to say they got to go out and get this guy, and that guy, I couldn't tell you, but I think they have to make a concerted effort and let him know, hey, look, man, it's a new day. We're doing some things differently. We like for you to be part of it. I'm sorry about what took place, but I wasn't here. And they got one more decision to make on who's going to be the president of that team. And that's going to be a huge decision in their direction. I know 3 of the candidates in it. I think all 3 of them would be good. There's, I think, 4 or 5 that are involved in it. And I think within the next couple of weeks, we'll see what the real direction of the Houston Texans is going to be.
Drew Brees retired yesterday as he moves on to NBC. Already had a deal. That deal's been known since April. Yeah, he had a home going from there. Now, is he going to be on Football Night in America, or is he moving into the booth?
No, you know what?
Collinsworth and
I got the impression that he's going to be a studio analyst initially because he's going to be involved with Notre Dame as well.
Yeah.
I think, it sounds to me they're just trying to see if Collinsworth's contract, I don't know what the terms of it are. Maybe they're letting that run out instead of making a quick replacement. And the other thing is, the TV deals are up anyway. So you just never know who's going to land where and who's going to have the big hammer in this next round of TV talk. So I think the NBC's loading up. Obviously, they don't have as much hockey to worry about anymore. So they're going to load up. And who's to say the NBC might get a bigger piece of the TV deal of the NFL?
How are Notre Dame fans going to react to a Purdue guy calling their games?
Who cares? Notre Dame is a national program, so I don't think it really makes a big deal of difference. I mean, they don't even play each other anymore.
They don't?
I don't think so. I don't think they played them this year. Remember, they were playing the ACC schedule.
Notre Dame had to go to the ACC this year. I just thought that was a one-year thing.
I don't think it makes a difference. It's been so long since Drew Brees was in college. I think most people have forgotten he was at Purdue. They probably remember him when he was in San Diego more than they remember him being at Purdue.
Depending on what Collinsworth's contract is, I could see someone like ESPN making a run for them. Now that ABC is going to be back into the mix with the Super Bowl for that, so you move, if it coincides with where Al Michaels is with his contract, you just move Tirico and a Drew Brees or somebody to the booth, or Dungy to the booth, and then you bring in, you take Collinsworth over to ESPN and make him your marquee guy on those broadcasts for Monday Night Football.
I didn't find anything wrong with the current team that ESPN had.
Well,
but let me ask you this question: how many people
goes to the front office? You need somebody to replace him.
Yeah, but he isn't in the front office yet. And who's to say that he will do it? But here's a question for you: do you really turn the game on to see who's talking?
You know what? Okay, you don't. But when Booger McFarland was doing Monday Night Football, it was a problem. It wasn't good. And when the guy isn't
what wasn't good about it?
It's just him on his little machine going up and down the sidelines. And when you feel like the broadcasters are trying to make the game more about themselves.
Do you think Booger McFarland came up with that idea to say, I want to be on a camera dolly and go up and down the field? Guys like that get put in a bad situation because somebody else thought it was a good idea. I'm going to give Booger McFarland credit for one thing. I think that guy was as prepared as any analyst that ESPN has had. He understood both sides of the ball. He stayed in his lane of knowing what to talk about. Now, it didn't work for different reasons, but I think Booger McFarland had a problem with one other thing. He wasn't being himself. I think he was trying to be something that they've encouraged him to be. And the unfortunate thing about it is it's almost like pulling the pin on a hand grenade, and say, here, hold this, and then you walk away. And when it blows up, they just shake their head and say, boy, I wonder what he did that for. And I think he was kind of put in that situation. I'm not one that needs Tony Romo or any of these other guys to tell me what's going on. And I'm not, and I'm just speaking for me. but I am not one that feels like just because a guy retired, he's going to be smarter than the guy who's been doing it, because it's harder than you think to walk off the field on into a booth and say, all right, what are we doing? And that's a big problem we have today in broadcasting. We have too many guys that are ill prepared. And I don't know what kind of guy Drew Brees is going to be.
Off the field and throwing them in. They're
you're
trying
right.
to do that way too much.
You know,
to the
Jackie
point
Slater,
where these guys aren't even prepared to leave the game. You saw Jason Witten.
Yeah.
After 1 year, he went back and played football. So he saw the money. He thought it was going to be an easier job to go into the booth rather than getting hit every Sunday. And he went there and he looked and he goes, well, damn, this is harder than actually playing the game. I'm going to go back and play the game. To where Jason Witten retired again, and now he's not even in broadcasting. Now he's coaching high school somewhere.
Well, Jackie Slater once told me, he said, if you haven't found your niche in this business by year 3, you won't be around for year 4. And I think he was spot on. And because the turnover of players is too great, and everybody is this surefire Hall of Famer. I mean, think about all the guys who retired and walked into the booth and eventually got to the Hall of Fame, and they weren't very good.
Yeah.
I mean, and it works that way. I mean, there's some things you just may not be good at. And that's why I commend Peyton Manning. He went a totally different direction. He was going out to have fun. I bet Brady does the same thing. I think Brady's too smart to do something like this. And if you're going to do it, you got the great football experience. Find another niche like Peyton Manning, or be part of a legitimate pregame show where you can have fun. Now, the gold standard is obviously inside the NBA, and I think it'll be till the cows come home before somebody can duplicate it. But there are things that some guys are better at than others, and I think the key is finding that niche and finding the right network that's going to give you a chance to be you instead of being some caricature.
Hey, before we get out of here, just want to get your thoughts on the passing of boxer Marvin Hagler, passed away over the weekend at the age of 66.
One of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. I had a chance to go to a couple of his fights, and I knew him just a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we were in the Cub Scouts together or anything like that. But first of all, pound for pound, as tough as anybody. He was ambidextrous, so he was carrying a brick in both hands. He could fight southpaw, he could fight right-handed. And he fought in an incredible era where you had Sugar Ray Leonard, you had Thomas Hearns, you had a number of other good fighters. I told the story the other day. His first championship, he was fighting in London. He's fighting a guy named Alan Minter. And Minter was a tough guy. He was a tough character. And so he thought he could win the fight. And Hagler went on to dismantle him. Okay. I mean, he destroyed him. And Gil Clancy and Tim Ryan were doing the fight. And Tim Ryan and the crowd was trying to encourage Mentor. They were like, he said, the crowd is trying to get in there and help him. They're trying to fire him up. And Gil Clancy didn't even flinch. He said, the only way this crowd can help him is all 15,000 are going to have to get in the ring with him in order to beat Hagler tonight. And that was the start of something. You think about the fight against Hearns, the 3 best rounds ever in boxing. He ended Sugar Ray Leonard's career when he detached his retina. I mean, there are a lot of guys who were trying to cross the street when they saw Marvelous Marvin Hagler come down it. And he made enough money. He went to Europe. He was a spaghetti Western actor in Italy. Made a lot of money over there doing as an actor. Gave that up, came back and lived a nice, peaceful life here in the States. But, man, what an incredible fighter he was. Just impeccable.
If you have 3 minutes, go find that first round between him and Tommy Hearns, where the two of them, you watch a Floyd
throwing.
Watch a Floyd Mayweather fight right now. You could watch 3 of his fights, and you won't see as many punches thrown.
You're right.
As what you saw.
You're so right. You're right.
In that first round between both
a lot of these guys, Joe. There's a lot of fights today, and I'll throw you MMA into it too. Nobody had threw that much leather in a fight. I mean, you talk about the first round. It ended in the 3rd round, and I'm telling you, they were throwing in that round as well. And Hagler caught Hearns. He clipped him, and Hearns was never able to get his bearings. And then Hagler went in for the kill. And Thomas Hearns was as dangerous as any fighter in the game because he was 6'1", and he had an incredible. I think he had like a 6'5" wingspan. I mean, he was wirily strong. And if you could get inside on him, you might be able to do some damage. The problem was Thomas Hearns didn't know how to defend himself after he got hit because he never got hit. I remember one night, Manuel Stewart and I went out to dinner and we were talking because he had Thomas Hearns. He had Tommy Hearns since he was a kid. And he made that point. He said, hey, Thomas just probably didn't have as good of a defense as he needed to have because he'd never been in that situation before. And, we're talking about two of the greatest in Leonard and Hearns that Marvelous Marvin Hagler dispatched. So, yeah, I got great respect for him and what he meant to the game of boxing.
Also, too, if you go back and watch that fight, watch the referee during that fight, too, because he was just as athletic as the two guys.
He had to be. I don't know what he got paid that night, but it wasn't enough because he got a workout in his own right. And I strongly urge you make a great point, Joe. If you haven't seen Marvelous Marvin Hagler, go to YouTube, pull it up, and you'll say, holy shit. I guarantee it. I mean, that fight's got to be 30 years old, and I remember like it was yesterday. It may be longer than that.
I watched it this week. I didn't see the year on it, but I mean, it's from the 80s, so it's over 30 years. I mean, I think it was from the 80s, so it's over 30 years old. Yeah. I
mean, they were throwing, but that was in an era where every weight class was stacked. Okay. We didn't have like these multiple belts. We didn't have 13 different weight classes. I mean, you had to make weight. Okay. And there were some guys who had to move up or move down, but there were 3 or 4 legitimate contenders in each weight division, and nobody ducked each other. We have guys that duck each other, and that's why I loved Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya, when he came on the scene, he said, "Where is he? I want him." We don't see that as much. I think as good as Floyd Mayweather was, there were some guys Floyd Mayweather thought twice about near the end of his career because he wanted to remain an undefeated champion, and I respect that. But in the era of Hagler and Hearns and Leonard and Roberto Duran and all of those guys, you couldn't duck a guy because there was another guy standing behind him that might have been just as tough.
Who do you have interviews coming up with this week?
That's a great question. We were looking at trying to do, we may unveil Keith Costas this week.
I haven't. No, we are unveiling Keith Costas this week. He's going to be on Weekend Joe this weekend, and then he'll be starting to do the weekly podcast with you on the website. So, and
we're going to hopefully, I've been trying to. Kevin Weeks and I have been crossing paths, and we're trying to line him up. And I talked to Fran Charles, and Fran Charles called me the other day, and Kevin Weeks did too. They were working at the same studio that same day because the NHL network and MLB network share the same facility. And they were crossing each other, and somehow or another, my name came up, and both of them were almost late to the set because they were telling Claibs stories, as both of them told me later. So we're going to try and get one of those two on. But more importantly, we're just trying to focus on some baseball down here and try and round up a few people from down here to talk to about what they see and what they feel this season is going to look like for the Cardinals and the teams that we've had a chance to see. That's the unfortunate thing, Joe. I don't know anything about anybody else but the Mets, the Marlins, the Nationals, and the Astros because that's all we've had a chance to see. Yeah, unless I watch one of the West Coast games in the evening.
And I was going to say, when you look at who the Cardinals are going to be playing, I mean, you haven't seen the Pirates yet. I mean, we know they're going to be bad, but you just don't know how bad. And then all 3 other teams from the NL Central are all out in Arizona. So
yeah,
I haven't seen any. I couldn't tell you the last time I heard anything about what the Brewers camp looks like this year.
You know what? I think the Brewers are going to have the best defensive outfield in the National League from what the guys that they have out there in Lorenzo Cain and JBJ and also the former MVP, and his name escapes me right now, Christian Yelich.
Yeah,
it's pretty good outfield. They're going to be okay. I think their pitching is going to be sneaky good. And this division will have 3 teams that will battle. And the Cubs might have something to say about it too. Cincinnati is going to have to beat everybody 9-8 somewhere along the way. But you know what? They still are a good team. They got some offense. I don't think they can catch ball though. I mean, their defense is going to be shaky at best. They got one guy in Tucker Barnhart that I would trust playing defense. Everybody else is going to be suspect.
Well, you talk about, I mean, we mentioned the Cubs. We talked about Tyler O'Neill and how good his spring has been so far. The newly acquired Jock Peterson for the Cubs right now is just he's lights out.
Yeah, he's
over a 1900 OPS right now with 5 home runs. And I know, again, it's spring training. I get it. I know it has to, go over to the regular season, but that was the Cubs' one big free agent signing. And so far it's showing that it's paying off.
I haven't seen enough of Jock Peterson, but I bet he's lighting up right-handers. I bet a lot of that came off of right-handers, and maybe they try and find a platoon situation because lefties carve him up. So we'll see how things unfold. But it's going to be a fun season, and here's the deal. You still got to play, no matter how bad a team might be on paper. And I'll give you a good example. The Pittsburgh Pirates weren't very good, but they had the Cardinals number last year.
No, I agree. And hopefully, I mean, the Pirates should be worse this year and the Cardinals should be better. So it should even out it should level off towards the Cardinals. All right, Claibs, you enjoy the rest of your day off. We will talk later. For everyone else, this podcast, if you missed any of it, it'll be up on the website, on all the podcast sites, and the video will be up on YouTube later today as well. This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. We'll talk to you later, everybody.